The echoes of the past. The discovery that changed everything. The galaxy had been silent for eons. For as long as the Velari Dominion had existed, they had searched for evidence of civilizations beyond their own. Their scientists believed that, if life existed elsewhere, it would have either reached out by now or been discovered through one of the thousands of exploration expeditions launched across the stars. Yet, in all their vast archives, in every recorded mission, they had found nothing. That was, until the transmission arrived. At first, the Velari assumed it was just another random anomaly, an echo from some collapsed star or an ancient pulsar. But as the data streamed in, patterns emerged. Complex, structured, intentional. Something intelligent had sent this signal. For the first time in recorded history, the Velari had proof of another species. Excitement turned to urgency. The Dominion assembled a fleet of diplomatic and scientific vessels. If intelligent life had survived somewhere in the void, they needed to find it before it was too late. They had no idea that they were already too late. The species that had sent the signal was not waiting for discovery. They had been waiting for someone to come looking. The journey to the forgotten world. The Dominion's most advanced ship, the Vishara, led the expedition toward the signal's origin, a system deep within an uncharted region of the Perseus arm of the galaxy. As the fleet neared the system, the excitement among the crew grew. No one had expected to be part of the most important discovery in Velari history. "Entering the target system now," reported the navigator. "Scanners active," responded the ship's intelligence officer, his hands trembling slightly. A planet appeared on their displays. Lush, blue-green, and teeming with life. A living world. But what set their nerves on edge was not the planet itself, but what surrounded it. Orbiting the world was a vast network of artificial satellites, space stations, and debris fields. Some were still functional, blinking with automated signals. Others were nothing but derelicts, shattered and adrift, their purposes lost to time. The Velari had expected to find primitive life, maybe even a pre-industrial society. Instead, they had found the ruins of a once great civilization, a civilization that had clearly reached for the stars, and then vanished. The ghosts of humanity. The fleet cautiously approached the largest orbital structure, a station the size of a small moon, its once pristine metal plating now scarred with age and battle damage. "No life signs detected," reported the science officer. "But there is something odd about this structure." "What do you mean?" asked Captain Velix, the mission commander. "It's old. Too old. According to our scans, this station has been abandoned for over 10,000 years." Murmurs rippled across the bridge. 10,000 years. That couldn't be possible. The Velari had only recently developed the technology to travel among the stars. If a civilization had reached this level of advancement millennia before them, why had they never heard of it? What had happened to the species that built this? And why had they left their world behind? The message in the darkness. A signal suddenly crackled through the ship's communications array. It wasn't from the planet. It wasn't from the satellites. It was coming from inside the abandoned station. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Something was still transmitting. The officers scrambled to isolate the message. It was weak, fragmented, but it wasn't random. It was a voice. The crew listened as an alien language played through the ship's speakers, repeating in a slow, solemn rhythm. The Dominion's AI systems worked furiously to decode it, filtering through millions of linguistic algorithms to find a match. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, a translation appeared on the screen. The bridge crew read the words in silence, their faces pale with disbelief. It was a warning. The words of the fallen. "To those who find this message, know this. We were here. We existed. We thrived. And then, we were erased. We were the first to rise, the first to build, the first to dream of the stars. But we were not the only ones in the void. Beware what sleeps beyond the light. We fought them, but we did not win. We ran, but we were found. We hid, but we were hunted. You are not alone. And if you have heard this message, then it is already too late. The message ended. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The question no one could answer. The bridge officers turned to their captain, waiting for orders, for guidance, for an explanation. But Captain Vilix had none. The Velari had come expecting to find primitive life, not the ruins of a civilization far older and greater than their own. And worse, they had no idea what had destroyed it. But something else troubled the captain more than anything. If this civilization had been erased 10,000 years ago, then who had sent the signal that had lured them here? Had something survived? Or was something else using this planet as bait? Whatever the answer, one thing was certain. They had found humanity. And humanity had left behind a warning they could no longer explain. The silent guardians. The echo in the void. The bridge of the Vashura was deathly silent. The crew had spent their entire lives believing they were alone in the galaxy, pioneers venturing into the unknown. Now they stood at the precipice of a discovery that shattered everything they had ever believed. The voice from the ancient station still echoed in their minds. You are not alone. And if you have heard this message, then it is already too late. Captain Vilix Rowe forced himself to breathe. His crew, his people, were looking to him for guidance. But what could he say? They had come searching for intelligent life. Instead, they had found the ruins of something far greater than themselves. And a warning from the past. A warning they did not understand. The ghost of humanity's empire. The fleet's science team worked tirelessly, scanning the massive space station for any trace of its creators. Its architecture was unlike anything the Velari had ever seen. Vast corridors lined with towering columns, intricate metal engravings depicting symbols they couldn't decipher. It had been built to last. And yet, the civilization that had crafted it was gone. One of the junior officers, Lieutenant Rhea, turned from her console, her voice shaking. Captain, there's something else. Vilix strode over, peering at the holographic analysis of the station's outer hull. What he saw sent a chill through his veins. The station was still operational. Not completely. Many of its systems had degraded over time, but something inside was keeping it running. And more than that, something was watching them. The last defenders. Without warning, alarms blared across the bridge. Incoming signal detected. Vilix barely had time to react before a new transmission overrode their communication systems. This time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a command. The message appeared on their screens, translated into their language. State your intent. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't an automated distress beacon. Someone, or something, was still here. Vilix stepped forward, his voice steady. We are explorers of the Velari Dominion. We received a signal and came seeking intelligent life. We mean no harm. The response came instantly. Humanity, Udas Gion. Turn back. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Humanity. The name of the lost civilization. The ghosts that had left their ruins scattered across this system. Vilix hesitated, then spoke again. Who are we speaking to? For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, a final message appeared on the screen. We are TTA Last Defenders, the unseen guardians. The station's ancient doors groaned as they opened for the first time in centuries. The Velari crew, armed but cautious, stepped into the station's darkened corridors, their lights flickering against cold metal walls. Inside, they found remnants of the past. Tattered banners displaying symbols they did not recognize, towering statues of beings who once stood at the height of power, and vast, dark chambers lined with machinery long since silent. And then, they found them. Lining the station's central hall were figures encased in metallic armor, humanoid in form but clearly not alive. Their bodies stood rigid, frozen in place, as if waiting for something. But they weren't statues. They were warriors, their armor covered in battle scars, their weapons still clutched in iron grips. The cold realization settled over the crew. These were not the remnants of an abandoned civilization. This station was still guarded, and the defenders had never left. The Eternal Watchers. As they moved deeper into the structure, scanning every surface, the team realized the truth. These warriors were not statues, nor were they mindless automatons. They were machines, and they had been waiting. Vilix's communicator crackled to life, and a transmission from the ship came through. "Captain, we've analyzed the station's power core. It's not just keeping the systems alive, it's keeping these warriors in a state of preservation. They are dormant, but they could be reactivated at any moment." The implications were terrifying. Who had left them here? Had they been programmed to defend humanity's legacy, even long after its people had vanished? And more importantly, if they awoke, would they see the Velari as allies or intruders, the archive of the fallen? Beyond the Hall of Warriors, the team found something even more astonishing. A vast cathedral-like chamber stretched before them, its walls covered in illuminated scripts. The air was filled with an unnatural hum, as though the station itself were whispering memories of the past. At the center of the room stood a single pulsing console, a data archive, still active after all this time. Vilix approached cautiously. With a deep breath, he reached out and activated the console. The room came alive. Holograms flickered into existence, scenes of history recorded millennia ago. The Velari watched in stunned silence as images of titanic warships, planetary sieges, and desperate battles played before their eyes, the final moments of humanity's war for survival. The defenders had held the line, but it hadn't been enough. The enemy, whoever they were, had torn through their fleets, shattered their cities, and burned their homeworlds to ash. Yet, even in defeat, humanity had not gone quietly. They had left behind this place, a warning, a monument, a final bastion of resistance should the enemy ever return. The unfinished war. The last recording played, its message clear. If you find this, know that we fought. And if you are hearing this, it means the war is not over. We did not survive, but perhaps you will. The holograms faded, leaving the Velari in stunned silence. The enemy that had erased humanity was still out there. And the silent warriors standing in the halls of this station, they had been left behind to fight once more, should the need arise. Vilix took a slow breath, turning to his officers. "We need to leave." One of them hesitated. "Captain, if this station still holds weapons or technology." Vilix shook his head. "We came searching for life. Instead, we found a war that never truly ended. We are not ready for this." But as they turned to leave, the lights in the chamber shifted. A low, mechanical voice spoke for the first time in thousands of years. "You cannot leave." The crew turned in horror as the dormant warriors began to move. The awakening of the forgotten. The station comes to life. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension as the silent warriors, those mechanical sentinels, frozen in time, began to move. Their armored forms, coated in the dust of millennia, stirred as if waking from a deep slumber. Red optics flared to life, flickering and stabilizing into glowing slits that pierced through the dimly lit archive. Captain Vilix Rowe and his crew stood frozen, their weapons raised, but their minds screaming in protest. They had not come here for war. They had not come here to face whatever ghosts humanity had left behind. But it was no longer their decision to make. The station, this ancient sentinel of a forgotten empire, had decided for them. A deep mechanical hum resonated through the chamber as the armored figures turned their heads, their heavy footfalls echoing against the metallic floor. The message was clear. They had been seen. And now, the station wanted to know what they were. The Guardians speak. A hollow synthetic voice boomed through the chamber, originating from the lead warrior, a towering figure clad in reinforced plating, its armor engraved with the same mysterious symbols that covered the station's walls. Identify. The word was a command, not a request. Felix knew hesitation could be seen as a threat. He stepped forward cautiously, keeping his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We are explorers from the Velari Dominion," he said, his voice steady despite the fear curling in his stomach. "We received a signal and came seeking those who sent it. We do not wish to disturb this place." The warrior's optics pulsed, processing, analyzing. Another step forward, slow and deliberate. "You were not expected." The voice carried an emotionless weight. There was no hostility, no warmth, just judgment. Felix dared to press further. "Who are you?" The warrior's response sent a chill through the crew. "We are the last defenders. The war that never ended." The other sentinels shifted, their postures rigid but alert. They had been still for so long, long enough that the Velari could hardly fathom it. Yet here they were, moving, watching, thinking, and waiting. Felix gestured to his officers to lower their weapons. If the defenders had wanted to kill them, they would have already done so. "You called yourselves the last defenders." Felix continued carefully. "Defenders of what?" The warrior's optics dimmed slightly. When it spoke, its voice carried something that sounded almost like regret. "We are the last of the old war." A murmur spread through the Velari crew. They had seen glimpses of the war in the station's archives, a war that had burned entire planets, consumed fleets, and left nothing but silence in its wake. Felix's heart pounded. "Who were you fighting?" The answer came as a whisper through the station's speakers, a name lost to time. "The Annihilators." The word carried a weight that sent shivers through everyone who heard it. "They came from the void," the warrior continued. "They came without warning, without mercy. They sought not conquest, but extinction." The silence that followed was unbearable. Extinction. The Velari had always believed the galaxy was empty before them, that they were the first to venture into the stars. But if what this warrior said was true, then they were not the first. They were merely the next. The legacy of humanity. Felix forced himself to ask the question he did not want to hear the answer to. What happened to humanity? The warrior turned its head slightly, as if considering whether or not to answer. Then, finally, it spoke. They fought. They died. But they did not surrender. The holographic archives around them flickered to life again. Scenes of war. Human soldiers in powered armor, fighting against monstrous, shifting constructs that blurred the line between machine and nightmare. Warships breaking apart in planetary atmospheres, hurling themselves at enemy fleets in final desperate acts of defiance. Cities burning, worlds collapsing. The last remnants of an empire that had once ruled the stars, reduced to ashes. And then the final recording played. A human figure stood in a dimly lit room, speaking to an unseen audience. His uniform was tattered, his face lined with exhaustion. Yet his voice was calm, resolute. "This is our last stand. The Dominion has fallen. Earth is lost. But we will not vanish. Not truly. As long as one of us remembers, we endure." He placed his hand on a control panel, and behind him, a vast stasis chamber lit up, row upon row of cryogenic pods. Felix felt his breath hitch. Humanity had not vanished. They had left something behind. The final words of the recording sent a chill through the crew. "To those who find this, we leave our final warning. The Annihilators were never defeated. They only stopped." The recording ended. The awakening of the last. A sudden energy surge pulsed through the chamber. The air vibrated with unseen power. The defenders turned, their optics flashing. Activation DETCTED. Felix barely had time to react before the station itself began to hum. Systems long dormant roaring back to life. A screen flickered on the central console, displaying lines of text in the long-lost human language. The Velari AI translated it instantly. Cryogenic Uriviviel Initiated. Velix's blood ran cold. The last defenders were not just machines. They had been guarding something all along. And now, after thousands of years, something buried deep within this station was waking up. The humans were not gone. Velix turned to the defenders, his heart pounding. What's happening? For the first time since they had arrived, the lead defender hesitated. Then, it answered. The last survivors are awakening. A low, rhythmic thud echoed through the chamber. One after another, the cryogenic pods began to open. Velix watched in stunned silence as the first human in 10,000 years drew their first breath.